It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up? YouTube, it's your boy Millzy back with Hometown Commander. And we're back for another episode of Millzy Brews, per usual arrangement. I'm here to brew a deck with you, for you, however you want to look at it. If you didn't see my episode last week, just want to let you guys know that the format has changed. It's going to be linked down in the description. If you just want to see the deck tech, you don't want to see me build the deck, the link will be down there so you can just see the deck tech. If you want the full experience, if you want to see me brew it and brew it along with me, go ahead and stick around to this video, like, subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you would have added, what you would have done differently, what commanders you'd like to see coming up. I want to let you know we're going to be going back to some more Dominaria United commanders until Brothers War comes out, and believe me, we will be hitting the ground running hard on a Brothers War when it comes out. I finished all the 40k commanders that I really wanted to brew. I expect I probably brewed more than most people when it came to 40k. I imagine not very many people were going to be taking their time really diving deep into 40k, and that's okay. Each of us have our own experience that we want to have when it comes to Magic. But I really enjoyed Dominaria United, and I didn't get a ton of time to brew on it. I have a couple decks. Jodo, of course, which we saw earlier up on the channel, is a deck that I've really enjoyed playing, and I've tried my hand at a few others. But this deck we're brewing today, Black-White Clerics, or Black-White Life Gain as well, is something that is a deck that I had a ton of fun with back when Zendikar Rising released. We got a Commander Aura, Skyclave Hierophant, that came out in Zendikar Rising. This is a commander I used for a while, and I really like Aura. But in Dominaria United, we got Elas il-Kor Sadistic Pilgrim, which is a soul sister in the command zone. What I mean by soul sister is referring to a few white cards, and we'll get into them in a second, that either gain you life when a creature enters the battlefield under your control, or when a creature enters the battlefield at all. And what's cool about Elas il-Kor is not only do we get a life when a creature enters the battlefield under our control, but we also, each of our opponents loses a life when one of our creatures die. This is going to be really cool because this is going to kind of set up all of our life game, end game payoffs, which we'll get into in a second. What I want to do is go through the new cards that really honestly made me want to look at this deck and see if any of them, and basically add them to the list and talk about what. So the first one was Shadowrite Priest. This is one of the five new lords that came out in Dominaria United. It says other clerics you control get +1/+1. It says for 5 and 2 black, we can sacrifice another cleric to search our library for a black creature card, put it on the battlefield, and shuffle. Yes, 5 mana is a little bit expensive, but we'll always have plenty of either tokens or creatures around to sacrifice. But this should help us enable some combos, or really help us push into our opponents to hopefully get some good damage, or go get the right creature card at the right time. Only downside is that creature has to be black, but that's okay. We're going to play a lot of black creatures that are really important in our list anyway. But I really like Shadowrite Priest. I think it does exactly what I wanted to. One that I'm interested in trying out in Commander, because I think it's definitely going to be a lot more played in Standard and 60-card formats where you can play multiples of them, is a card called Anointed Peacekeeper. You see it here on the screen. Vigilance, as it enters the battlefield, look at an opponent's hand, then choose any card name. Spells your opponent's cast with the chosen card name cost 2 more to cast. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name cost 2 more to activate, unless they're mana abilities. I think Anointed Peacekeeper is kind of interesting because it kind of acts as a Curse of Silence of sorts. If you've never played with Curse of Silence, I will pull it up here for you. Curse of Silence is an enchantment that says when it enters the battlefield, choose card names. Spells with a chosen name, enchanted player cast, cost 2 more to cast. And then when they play a card with that name, you can draw a card. The thing I like a little bit more about Anointed Peacekeeper is it says all opponents cast that card, cost 2 more to cast, not just the opponents whose hand we looked at. So, we could go after, we wouldn't want to go after a mana rock because when it activates its mana abilities, they wouldn't have to pay any more. But if you were really worried about Cyclonic Rift or a board wipe, or you know your opponents, let's say you play with your play group and you know the kind of cards that your opponents play, and you know what you kind of want to target, or if you even want to target their commander. If someone has a problematic commander and you know they always get it down pretty quickly and you want to make it cost 2 more, you can do that. I think Peacekeeper is really interesting, and it's going to kind of help us out a little bit. We're going to play a little bit of the authority of the console's blind obedience, kind of stopping our opponents a little bit, because we're going to need a little bit of time to set up since we're in black-white, and I think Peacekeeper is going to help. Next up, we have Evolved Sleeper. Now, Evolved Sleeper isn't a Cleric on its card, but as soon as we put 1 black mana into it, it becomes a Cleric, and then as we keep going up, we can make it a 3/3. That's also Phyrexian. And then for 3 mana, eventually we can put a counter on it, lose a life, and draw a card. And it's never bad to have a draw outlet that you can pump a ton of mana to if we ever get so much mana that we can dump a bunch of mana to it. So I kind of like the idea of Evolved Sleeper. We can bring it down cheap, we can buff it up cheap, and then it becomes a Cleric. So it's going to do good things for us. Sister Hospitaller was the one card from 40k I found kind of interesting when it came to the Clerics. It says, when it enters the battlefield, return a target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. You gain life equal to its mana value. It is 6 mana, but the cool part here is this is something we could get off Shadowrite Priest, or this is something that we could reanimate, which is something that we have access to in black. We have plenty of cool effects to do that. So I kind of like this. We can bring this back to get something else back. And this is only when it comes in. So if we sacrifice this effect and reanimate it back or something like that, we can keep using this to our benefit. It is a little overcosted, but I think I would try to reanimate this more often than anything else. A card that I'm really intrigued to see if it fits, although it is not a Cleric, is Shieldred, the Apocalypse. The reason is I think Shieldred does everything that we want it to do. Gain life for us drawing cards. We want as much passive life gain as we can get. That's, I think, what we're trying to do in Cleric Trouble anyway. Most of our Clerics are going to care about gaining life anyway, and all of our finishers are going to be about gaining life. And then whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose to life. I think this helps us shut down our opponents, and hopefully Shieldred becomes the target they need to take out and not any of the other cards that we have on the battlefield. So Shieldred is definitely worth at least the slot for the moment. We got a reprint of Caves of Koilos, which I know is not very meaningful, right? Caves of Koilos is not an expensive card before we got a reprint of it, but I am in love with this new art for it. I think this new art's really pretty and I love it. That is, I believe, Shieldred's little area that she was in when she was being regenerated. And then we have Plaza of Heroes. Plaza of Heroes is going to get a little bit of discussion for a long time about, is it a staple? Is it not a staple? Is it a good land? Is it not a good land? We're going to be playing enough legendary creatures in this deck that I think this is going to be worth it. And it will always tap for Elas il-Kor, which means even if we see this on turn 1 or 2, we'll still always be able to cast it. So I think Plaza Heroes is plenty worth it. And as we keep going down this chain, we're going to see more and more legendary creatures probably that get put into our list. And so I think that Plaza Heroes is more than worth it. If you do not like Plaza Heroes, if you think it's overrated, if you don't think it's worth your deck, that's completely fine. That's cool. I think what I like about brewing is that we all get to brew to our own play styles and our own ideas of what we want in a deck. So if you don't like Plaza Heroes, that's completely fine. Swap it out for another basic land. We'll go over lands later. All right, well, let's talk about Clerics. Let's talk about the tribe. Let's talk about what kind of stuff we want to see. Right here, we see what I'm realistically trying to play the most of, and that Soul Warden is what I'm referring to as a Soul Sister. This is a card that when it says, whenever another creature enters the battlefield, gain a life. This is exactly what we want. When our opponents play creatures, we're going to gain a life. When we play creatures, we're going to gain a life. We see down here, Soul's Attendant. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you may gain a life. And then we see Suture Priest right here. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may gain a life. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your opponent's control, you may have that player lose a life. So all of these cards are doing the same thing that we want to do. We want to gain intermittent life gain over time. And what we're going to try to do is use that life gain eventually to in different ways to win the game, and we'll talk about that in a second. What I want to do is let's fill out some of our creature slots, and then we'll go into the rest of it. Okay, part of our kind of combo win, if you want to call it that, is Veto, Thorn of the Dusk Rose. This was printed in M21, really cool card. It says whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. Well, this is really cool because if we have this out in all of our Soul Sisters, we're going to start having our opponents lose life, which is really great. But for those of you that are not familiar with a very popular commander combo, I want to show you this combo, which Veto is one part of. Veto is very similar to a card called Sanguine Bond, which says whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. But it and Veto both pair really well with an enchantment that creates an infinite loop to win us the game by our opponents losing all their life, which is Exquisite Blood, which for 4 black says whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. So with both of these on the battlefield, we simply need to either gain life or have an opponent lose life, and it will create a feedback loop that will gain us the life. We would choose an opponent to lose that much life. They would lose life. We would gain that amount of life back, and we would basically be able to machine gun all of our opponents down to 0. So Sanguine Bond and Exquisite Blood, I think, are going to be really good top-end potential for our deck. Now, like I said, Elas il-Kor Veto has a very similar effect to Sanguine Bond. So it's kind of like we have access to them. Exquisite Blood's really the one that we need to get if we want to complete that, depending on whichever we have. But we're in black. We're going to have access to a lot of tutor potential, and we will go over that in a second. So there's one of our big combos that we're going to kind of be pushing towards. Okay, we see 2 of my other favorite kind of not as flashy clerics, but I think they do a really good job in Yawgmoth and Selfless Spirit. So Yawgmoth has protection from humans, which is kind of funny because it's a human. But it says pay 1 life, sacrifice another creature, put a -1/-1 counter up to 1 target creature and draw a card. And 2 and a black and discard a card, we can proliferate, which allows us to give more tokens. And then Selfless Spirit says we can sacrifice it to give all creatures we control indestructible. I like Yawgmoth because we are going to be going for a couple cards in our deck, probably, that when we gain life, we make tokens or get some sort of benefit. So Yawgmoth can sacrifice those tokens to give us some benefit. And for me, I like to play my Cleric Tribal, or I found success in the past, with a little bit of an Angel sub-theme, and I'll show you why in a little bit, why I want to do that. So if we're making these tokens and we're consistently pumping the tokens out, Yawgmoth is one of those things where we can use them to our benefit. The other thing is we're going to build ourselves into a small Aristocrat sub-theme. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the term Aristocrats or have never played an Aristocrats deck before, Aristocrat is a theme that describes sacrificing your own creatures, most of the times tokens, for some sort of benefit for you that also hurts your opponent. So Bastion of Remembrance is a really good choice here. It says whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. So we're gonna pair life game with tokens with Aristocrats, and I think this is the best package that we can slam together to do a lot of really good damage to our opponents. So let's keep going down. Priest of the Forgotten Realms is an interesting card for that Aristocrat strategy. I don't love it. I love it. I genuinely like the card. I think it's a good card. I've never had great success with it. I always seem to get it at the wrong time, but I think it's worth considering. Archivist of Ogma, new cleric. Whenever opponent searches the library, we gain a life and draw a card. Very worth getting played here. I think it's going to end up being really good for us. Okay. I didn't show. I didn't see Mother of Runes up here, but Mother of Runes is a very popular card, and we also got Giver of Runes as being a very similar thing. Each of them tap and have a creature we control get protection of a color of our choice until end of turn. These effects can be very useful because they do a lot of really good things. The protection is great because it stops them from being blocked or being targeted by any effects. But remember, protection does not get us around board wipes or anything like that. So we need to keep that in the back of our mind that although they're really good effects and they're going to be really good for us, they won't protect us from anything. I like Weathered Wayfarer a lot, especially since we're in red black, especially since we're in white black. We're going to get into a lot of trouble sometimes with being behind on lands, and I think Weathered Wayfarer is one of those cards early on in the game that can kind of help us push ourselves forward and get us those extra lands. So I think Weathered Wayfarer is definitely worth considering. Demon's Disciple is interesting. I just think we have better cards to do that. I'm purposely avoiding Ether Swarm Canonist and Grand Abolisher because I'm not looking to play too many stacks pieces, too many pieces that are going to stop our opponent from doing things. I more or less want to just use the pieces that are going to make the things come and tapped or gain us life. I'm not looking to completely punish. I'm not looking to play silence or anything like that. I want to have a little bit more of a Aristocrats theme than a stacks theme. So that's kind of where I'm going to kind of push that. But Marauding Blight Priest is really good for that. 2 and a black, whenever we gain life, each opponent loses a life. This is another enabler for our big Sanguine Bond Exquisite Blood combo. Disciple of the Vault says whenever an artifact is put from the graveyard to the battlefield, you may have a target opponent lose a life. We'll have to see how much treasure support or anything like that we end up actually using. If we do, then Disciple of the Vault could be great, but we're not going to be making a ton of artifacts otherwise, I don't think. So I don't think Disciple of the Vault's going to, fit as well. Twilight Prophet is, though, and this is one of my favorite cards for this list. Beginner Upkeep. That's basically if at any point in the game we have 10 or more permanents, we get the City's Blessing when this card is out. Then we have the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. This says if we have the City's Blessing, reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand. Each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is that card's converted mana cost. This is great because it draws us an extra card before we draw, and it also has the chance to hurt our opponents in the process. We're going to be playing not a lot of big cards, probably 5 or 6 or 7 at the maximum. But hey, that 5 or 6 goes to each opponent and we gain that much life. And it's just going to start chunking out our opponents and getting us more and more value. Moonblessed Cleric is a card that's going to come really in handy. It says when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an enchantment, reveal it, and put that card on top. This is very similar to a card called Enlightened Tutor that we're really very much going to have to rely on, especially because a lot of our payoffs are going to be enchantments. But the cool part about Moonblessed Cleric is if we can reanimate this, which is part of our plan, it's going to come back and search us for another one. So I really like Moonblessed Cleric. All right, Angel of Destiny is another one of my favorites in the Cleric tribe, and this was one of the few cards from Zendikar Rising that made me really want to build this deck. It's flying and double strike. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each gain that much life. So basically what will happen is, let's say my creature does 4 damage to a player. My creature will deal the 4 damage, but then after that, immediately after the damage is done, this will go on the stack, and we'll both gain 4 life after that. So our opponent will actually go back up to the same amount of damage done if it didn't kill them, or if it didn't knock them out of the game, and then we will go up 4 life. And this is the beginning of your end step. If you have at least 15 more life than your starting life total, so still 40 in Commander, so we'll have to be at 55 or more, each player Angel of Destiny attacked this turn loses the game. This is one of those cards that if we can get in some free hits with it, or play it right, it does have flying. If our opponent's decks don't have flying, we can highly benefit from Angel of Destiny. Really love that. Doom Necromancer is one of our free, not free, but one of our good reanimation targets here. It says black, tap, sack it to return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. This can get back some of those cards that we want to bring back in for a secondary effect. So that's really good. Righteous Valkyrie. This is one of the other cards around the release of Zendikar Rising that made me really want to build this deck. This is whenever another angel or cleric enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. And then it says as long as you have 7 or more life than your starting total, creatures get +2/+2. So once we start gaining life, once we hit above our total and we have Valkyrie out, our whole board buffs up. Right next to it, we have another part of this kind of cleric tokens theme, and that's Speaker of the Heavens. 1 white for a 1/1, Vigilance Lifelink. Create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying. Activate this only if you have 7 or more starting life total, 7 or more than your starting life total. So you see this kind of theme here. Some of these cards are going to care about us having more life than we started with. So I like Speaker of Heavens because once you get it down, you don't even have to attack with it. As long as you can tap it and get its effect, you can start making those 4/4 angels, which are either going to attack in the air and get us benefit, or they're going to be able to be sacrifice fodder for the different things that we have. Liliana Heretical Healer has been a card that I've always been kind of interested in this deck, but I've always been on the fence about it. So let's talk about it. So it's a 1 and 2 black for Human Cleric 2/3 lifelink. It says whenever a non-token creature you control dies, exile it and return it back to the battlefield under its owner's control. If you do, create a zombie, and it comes back as Liliana Defiant Necromancer. +2, each player discards a card. -X, return target non-legendary card with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then -8, you get an emblem with whenever a creature dies, return it to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. It's like the -8 is exactly what we want from Liliana Defiant Necromancer. I just worry about getting there because like this ability is great. We +1 once and then we can get almost anything we want back. But getting up to here, so I like this because it's almost free. It comes down for 3 mana. It has lifelink. It gives us the token when it dies, and then it does good on the back. So I think I'm kind of selling myself more. On that one. I think I really like it. Containment Priest is kind of interesting. I like the idea of stopping things from getting cheated in, but the problem is we kind of want to cheat in things too. So Containment Priest could actually hurt us more than it helps us. Timna the Weaver, one of the most popular clerics, at least in the command zone of all time, because it has partner. So at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, so after combat, you can pay X life, where X is the number of opponents that were dealt damage this turn. If you do, draw cards. This is going to be good because it's going to draw us cards, get us more cards into our hand. Next up, Null Priest of Oblivion. 1 and a black for a 2/1. But if we kick it, it allows us to bring something back to the battlefield. 6 mana is a little too much for that. I think I'm going to pass on Null Priest of Oblivion, although I think it's an interesting creature. We've just gotten so many new fun clerics over the last couple of sets that I think it gets kind of pushed out. Same thing with Whisper Bloodlord, just sacking 2 creatures to get a creature back from the battlefield. Seems interesting, but we have better things. Here's another one that I really like. Valkyrie Harbinger. At the beginning of each end step, if you gain 4 more life, we get a 4/4 angel. This can be really easy because if all of our opponents are playing creatures, we're going to get them back. We're going to be gaining life on things like Authority of the Consuls and things like that, which we're going to talk about in a second and add in a second. And that's going to allow us to gain life and gain life and gain life. Also, with these Soul Sisters, we're going to be gaining life. We're going to put in a lot of these effects so that we're always gaining life. And I think it's going to help us do that. I also really like Drana. It says when it attacks, defending player chooses a non-legendary creature from our graveyard, return that card to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it, and it's also a vampire. So this is going to allow us to get our creatures back as well. So you see a lot of these clerics are either gaining us life or bringing things back, and I think we can really play into this as we go. We have Luminarch Aspirant, which feels like it would be good in a Cleric's deck, but I wonder if there's a better slot we can use for the Aspirant. So I'm going to let Aspirant go for now, although I think it is really interesting. I also really like Thleese. Beginning of your end step, create X 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying, where X is the number of tokens you created this turn. This is a maybe if we want to go that tokens route. I think it's not a bad card for that, but we may not be able to consistently do what it is that we want to do. I really like Ailey, Arsenal Pilgrim. Death Touch, 1, sacrifice another creature. You gain life equal to the sacrifice creature's toughness. So we can sacrifice tokens maybe and get the life off of it. Or if we have a big creature that's going to die, we can pay this and just gain a life instead of it dying from a kill spell or something like that. And then for 3 and sacking another creature, we can exile a non-land permanent as long as we have 10 or more life than our starting life total, which is not going to be very hard in this deck. All right, Voice of the Blessed, one of the very new cards that's going to give us a lot of value. Whenever we gain life, we put a counter on it. As long as it has 4 or more counters on it, it has Flying and Vigilance. And as long as it has 10 or more counters on it, it has Indestructible. We just want to watch this thing grow, and we want it to get better and better and better. So this is one of the cards that is going to start off small, but as we gain life, every time we gain life, it gets counters, and it grows and it grows. Lunarch Veteran, another Soul Stitcher that just got released in Midnight Hunt. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under control, we gain a life. And on the backside, it says whenever another creature you control leaves the battlefield, you gain a life. So we kind of get both sides. Now, this one is only for us, but that's okay. We're going to be playing with enough creatures and hopefully enough tokens to really matter. I like Nils. I think Nils is kind of interesting. This was released in the Brina Precon. It says at the beginning of your end step, for each player, put a +1/+1 counter up to one target creature that player controls. And it says for each creature with one or more counters on it, can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless its controller plays X, where X is the number of counters on that creature. This is kind of cool because if those creatures get more counters than what we put on it, it doesn't matter. They still can't attack us, but we can kind of strategically place counters on the right creatures to get us some benefit. So here I'm searching by EDH rec rank. There's a couple clerics that I can think of from Commander Legends 2. If we don't see them, we'll go looking for them. But let's go ahead and add these in because I feel like we're going to end up having 95. We're going to end up having too many tabs open and not all of them are going to be added in. So again, I really like the benefit that we have from all of our creatures. All of them are either going to be caring about gaining life or making tokens or doing all of our things. So I think we're going to end up, getting a lot of benefit from our creatures, even though we're not going to have a ton of mana. You know, we are only in black-white, which means that we're going to have some trouble with getting our mana situated. I think we probably need to play Giver of Runes and Mother of Runes. We probably want to end up protecting our creatures more than anything else. All right. So I think what we'll do is we'll finish looking at some creatures, and then we'll talk about some of our payoffs, some of our cards that we're going to use to pay off our life gain, and some of our kind of faux stack pieces, you know, the ones that we're going to kind of slow our opponents down with. And then we'll go ahead and rock over to our EDH rec page. I just pulled up Elas il-Kor's EDH rec page for him in Cleric Tribal, for them in Cleric Tribal. I'm sure that I could have probably pulled up Aura as well, because Aura is a popular, or was a popular Cleric Tribal commander as well. So maybe we can, if we're still feeling like we need some ideas, we can always go down that road as well. I've been really enjoying my time. I normally build on Moxfield, but I've been using Architect for the series, mainly just to keep the databases separate, making sure that my making sure that my deck lists stay up here untouched. But it is cool to see another platform. I have to say I really like both. I wouldn't say that I'm biased towards either one of them. I think they both have their great things about them. I think I'm gonna let's add Felice as well, just so that way if we end up going that route, she'll end up being useful, I'm sure. Okay, let's go for some more clerics. Sorry about that. That probably seemed really loud. It felt pretty loud to me too. Okay. Bishop of Wings, I don't think will end up giving us enough good value because we're not going to be playing that many angels. Although I guess you could argue if we're going to try to make angel tokens, then it probably could be worth it. But I'm okay. Tabarax is a card I've played in the past, but I think we have better cards we can use. Auric Champion seems really cool. Another one of those Soul Sister cards. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, we gain life. Ravos is really cool. Other creatures get +1/+1, and then at the beginning of our upkeep, we can return a creature card from our graveyard to our hand. Allows us to reuse those cards. I like the idea of Priest of Ancient Lore, but I feel like we're not going to be able to recur it as much as we want to. So that's completely okay. Whenever another creature is battlefield under your control and Passioned Order, that's okay. We have plenty of other ones. 8.5 Tails is kind of on that Mother of Runes style effect, but I don't really see the benefit of it as much on that one. Okay, we're going to keep going. I like Strict Proctor. It shuts off ETB abilities, but I feel like it's just going to end up being more of a hassle for us than anything else. So we are going to skip over for now. Shale seems kind of interesting, putting +1/+1 counters on each creature at the end of the battlefield under our control. That could be kind of interesting. Edgewalker is a really good card. It reduces all clerics spells we cast by black-white. So that's going to be really good, especially for our a little bit more expensive clerics. The only thing there is it can only reduce white and black pips. It can't reduce the colorless cost. So it's not like for example, with Barrow here, it would just be reduced down to 2 colorless. But with White Plume Adventurer, it would just be down to 2 colorless. The black here wouldn't take away one of the colorless. So that's just something to keep in mind. I really like Selfless Glyphweather for that, exiling it to give all of our creatures indestructible. And then the backside is a board wipe. Markov Purifier is kind of interesting at the beginning of our end step. If we gain life, we can pay 2 if we do a draw card. I think we'll have plenty of options for that, though. High Priest of Penance is kind of interesting. When it's dealt damage, you may destroy target online permanent. That could be something to consider. Burko seems interesting, but since we're playing with mostly clerics, I don't think we're going to ever actually be able to... don't think we're ever going to be actually able to satisfy enough of that to get a good value. Here's one of the ones I'm really interested in. Shadowheart Dark Justicar. 1 in a black, tap, sacrifice another creature, draw X cards where X is that creature's power. This could be interesting for some card draw, especially when we're sacrificing our tokens, to draw cards. That could be definitely interesting. I like Clerical Life's Blow. Whenever a cleric enters battlefield control, you gain a life. Whenever you gain life for the first time, put a counter on it. Something that could be really interesting. All right, and I think we'll probably stop there unless we see something right away when we go on this page, and I don't. Okay, the reason I'm going to stop there is because I have a feeling we'll end up missing 1 or 2 really good creatures, and we will see them on the EDH page, and then we'll end up having to cut. We're already going to have to cut creatures as it is, so I don't want to go so deep on creatures that we end up having to cut like 30 creatures. But that's okay. We're playing a tribal deck, which means we're going to be playing creatures anyway. So we're going to have to cut them anyway. But I'd like to have as best of a crop to pick from as we can. And I'm intrigued to see what we find. Our support is also going to factor in to what we keep as well. So, all right, so Clerical Life's Blood, put that in there. Okay, so we've got plenty enough creatures. In fact, we'll have to cut them anyway eventually, but that's okay. All right, so let's talk about the kind of cards that we're going to put in to kind of help our strategy along. First off is Authority of the Consuls. This is another Soul Sister effect. Creatures enter our opponent's control tapped, and then we gain a life when something comes out of their control. That's going to be really good. We've got Blind Obedience, which just has all of our artifacts and creatures opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. We've got, what is it? Relic. I can't remember. There's some sort of relic that gains us life when a cleric enters the battlefield under control. Okay. We've got Bastion of Remembrance. I think we want to play the Phyrexian Tower to allow us to sacrifice our creatures, or Phyrexian Altar, sorry, to sacrifice our creatures for mana. We most certainly can also play the Phyrexian Tower. It does a very similar thing, but on a land. So let's just sack a creature once per turn for black mana. So that's pretty good. I think we want to play... I'm blanking. Oh, it always sucks when you have these cards in your head and then you blank. We'll put in the Soul Ring. We'll put in the Arcane Signet. We'll put in our Talisman. This is Talisman of isn't it Hierarchy? And then we want our Orzhov Signet. I am a guy who likes to play the Crypt. If you don't like to play the Crypt, you are more than welcome to leave it out of your list. But it's a card that thankfully I have access to, so I like to brew with. I like to put Urza's Saga in when I have a couple different 0-1 mana rocks that allows us to go get them. I have a lot of ideas for cards in my head. Let's add in a few removal spells while we're here. Deadly Rollick. I think we will be able to have Dire Tactics not hurt us most of the time. Dire Tactics is a card that says exile target creature. If you don't control a human, you lose life. You go to that creature's toughness. I feel like more often than not, we're not going to end up losing life. So I think we're good there. Swords of Plowshares, Path to Exile, just some great 1 mana white removal, which is just really, really important to play removal, especially stuff that exiles. We'll throw Faithful Absence. I'm just trying to think of like removal in black-white. Despark, which will exile a permanent with mana value 4 or greater. Okay. How about sorcery speed removal? We have Dam, one of my favorite board wipes in our colors. I really like Winds of Abandon. It can be used at the right times to have really good success. Of course, there are great board wipes out there. We've got Farewell. And we have Vanquish the Hordes. Okay, and then we will get into, really quickly, we're going to get into our tutors, because since we're in black and in white, we have the ability to use them. D-Tutor, we're going to definitely take advantage of. Vampiric Tutor as well. I like the idea of Grim Tutor, but I feel like we have other options. Idyllic Tutor might end up being important since we're going to play enough artifact or enchantments. Enlightened Tutor will get us an artifact or an enchantment. But Idyllic Tutor only gets us those enchantments, which is still good. And then we'll consider Imperial Seal. I have a copy of one thanks to Dome Masters, and so we'll give some consideration there. We're at 72, which is mostly getting eaten up by the amount of creatures we have at the moment, but that's okay. Let's add some lands. We got Marsh Flats. We have Godless Shrine. We have Isolated Chapel. We have Shattered Sanctum from the most recent shot to Innistrad. We got the Caves of Koilos. We have Fetid Heath. Our Filter Land. I am now blanking on black-white lands, but that's okay. I knew this was going to happen. We'll add the Basilica, Orzhov Basilica. We want our command tower. I'd be half interested to play like snow lands to try to turn on blood on the snow, but I don't think we'll end up having enough of them. But I think that's good for now. We'll add we'll add a bunch of plains and swamps just for now. That's not what I wanted. Again, we'll probably end up black-white is not a color combination I play all the time, so I'm just having a tough time remembering our cards. But that's okay. Let's rock on over to EDH Rec. I always recommend you take a look at EDH Rec pages for the commanders that you build, whether it's the exact same commander that you're building or a commander that shares the same archetype. A lot of times you can find really good things. Sunlit Marsh, I actually don't mind. It's a tap land, but it is searchable, so I don't completely mind that. We're going to have to accept a little bit more of the tap lands in these color combinations because we don't have a lot of the fun ramp that we do in other colors. So I think we just have to kind of be okay with that. High synergy cards, we're seeing a lot of the same things we're playing. I'm avoiding Tabaraks. I just think we have better creatures that we can play. In that slot, Relic Vial was the creature or the card I was thinking of. Its bottom ability says, as long as you control a cleric, Relic Vial says whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. So that is kind of up the same line of Bastion, but we're going to also play, which I can't believe I didn't think of. We'll play Meat Hook as well. This is, it's again, has the same effect. Whenever a creature or opponent we control dies, each opponent loses a life. Whenever a creature or opponent control dies, we gain a life. Okay, we see Vito, we see Soul Lieutenant, we see Ailey, we see the Plowshares, Mother Runes, Priest, Selfless Spirit, Cleric class. Didn't think about Cleric class. Cleric class makes a ton of sense. Cleric class actually reminds me that I want to put the Heliod combo in this deck. So Heliod is a creature that says whenever we gain a life, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature or enchantment you control, and it gives creatures lifelink. But if our devotion's less than white, it's, 2 white is less than 5, it's not a creature. This is a really cool card. It enables a lot of life gain. We'll think about adding Walking Ballista. I mean, we do have the Searchers. Walking Ballista is a card when paired with Heliod for enough mana can gain infinite life, which will deal damage to our opponents for each life that we gain. So that's an interesting combo, and it works really well. So it's something we're going to consider. Let's keep rocking an EDH rec. I'm not seeing a ton of stuff that I love here. We have Cruel Celebrant, which isn't a cleric, but it kind of does that similar. I have clerics tribal selected. I do. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Minthara says ward X rexes the number of experience counters at the beginning of your end step. If a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, you get an experience counter, and it buffs all of our creatures. That could definitely be interesting. I like the idea of Lisa. Whenever a non-token creature dies, return it to the hand at the beginning of the next end step, and if a creature opponent controls die, exile it instead. That's kind of interesting. That's worth considering for sure. I like the idea of Luminous Broodmoth, bringing our creatures back. Zulaport Cutthroat could definitely be argued for since we're playing that kind of Aristocrat game plan, but I want to try to keep tribal as much as possible. That was the card that I did not. It's the card I was trying to think of, but I could not think of the name of, and that is Anguished Unmaking, one of our better black-white removal spells. Exile any permanent, and we lose 3 life for the privilege. Fracture was something I was kind of interested in, but I wasn't sure if it's going to be good enough too much of the time. I like the idea of Village Rites to sacrifice a creature and draw 2 cards. I feel like that's going to come in benefit a lot. Sack creature and draw 2. Teferi's Protection, really good choice to just protect our board if need be. It's going to be times we're going to have all of our permanents out, and we're going to need a little bit of protection, so I like that. D-Spark, Deadly Dispute, didn't even think of Deadly Dispute. Deadly Dispute does a very similar thing, sacrifice a creature or an artifact. And get a treasure and draw. Apparently I can't spell deadly. That's bad. Oh, come on. Deadly Dispute, kind of similar thing to Village Rites, sacrificing creatures, getting that value. Reckoner's Bargain does something very interesting. Altar's Reap does something very interesting, very the same. Malakir Rebirth seems kind of interesting. Could protect our creatures. Entomb would allow us to get a creature card into our graveyard to be able to reanimate. So that's definitely kind of interesting. Victimize was the card I was kind of interested in going for that reanimation route. Choose 2 creature cards in your graveyard. Sack a creature. If you do, return the other from your graveyard back to the battlefield. I think we also want to play Reanimate. Does the same, but for just 1 creature. Don't know why Deadly Alert. Maybe I clicked it accidentally. So Profane Prayers is kind of that. I like the idea of Rite of Oblivion. Basically just an exile removal. It is at instant speed, but I like that we can flash it back, and it does hit any permanents, any non-land permanents. So that seems pretty important. We're gonna need of course, board wipes. Kaya's Wrath seems kind of interesting. Vindicate, just destroy target permanent at 3 mana. Seems kind of interesting. We have Damnation, another great board wipe. Fumigate, another great board wipe that would gain us life. Okay, let's get down to the artifacts. Let's see what we're missing here. I like the idea of Skull Clamp. I just don't know how often we're going to be able to turn Skull Clamp on. I really like Pyre of Heroes. This is kind of a birthing pod, but only for creatures that share a creature type. So if we have enough, if we have a 2 that we really don't want, we can go up into 3 and so forth. I think that's worth a shot. I really like the idea of Bontu's Monument. Whenever we cast a creature spell, each opponent loses a life and we gain a life. That could come into importance. The big thing is going to be how many black creatures we have, which is probably going to be a lot. So I think Bontu's Monument is going to end up being in good value. Cosmos looks at the beginning of your end step, draw a card if your life total is greater than your starting life total. Otherwise, you gain 2 life. Pardon me, that could be really interesting. Aether Flux is kind of a cool card, allowing us to hurt our opponents for the amount of... for 50 life, we can deal 50 damage. That seems kind of interesting. I like the idea of Book of Exalted Deeds. At the beginning of our end step, if we get 3 or more life, we get a 3/3. I like the idea of something like Whip of Erebos, just to allow us to help gain more cards. Alhammar's Archive is going to help us gain more life. Bolas's Citadel is definitely a card that can enable us to kind of get more cards off the top of our library and finish things out. So I'm kind of interested there as well. We'll get a bunch of... I think the good part about Pyre of Heroes in this deck is that we can exchange our 2 mana creatures up into like Righteous Valkyrie or those, and then if we get a 3 that we don't want, we can trade it up into a 4. The cool part about Pyre Heroes is you're kind of always going up the chain from the creatures you have. So I find that really interesting. I think there's also some benefit probably to Herald's Horn as well, but we will come back to it. I wanted to take another look at some more enchantments. Etchings of the Chosen seems really good. Everything gets +1/+1, and then we sack a creature to give another creature indestructible. Folk Hero seems kind of interesting to draw cards. Black Mark Connections is probably exactly what we want. It's going to give us more mana, and then if we want, we can pay 3 life and get a Cleric. Smothering Tide is going to get us treasures, which is just going to help us along the way. I kind of like I like the idea of Agent of the Iron Throne, but we got to see how many actual Aristocrat payoffs we have when we get there. Phyrexian Reclamation, getting creature cards back to our hand from the graveyard could be interesting. Phyrexian Arena giving us more draw. Johnny's Welcome drawing us or gaining us life when creatures come in. Scarlet Splendor's been a card that's always kind of interested me. Whenever we cast a white spell, we get a life. Vampiric Rites, letting us sacrifice creatures to draw cards. Griffin Ares, another one of these cheap things. At the beginning of our end step, if we threw more life, we get a token. I think if we want to go up the Aristocrats route, this is one we consider. I really like Path of Bravery. The problem is we just really got to make sure that we're actually attacking. So this could be an interesting piece. And then I didn't see either of the cards I was really interested in. So we have Luminarch Ascension. It's an enchantment for 1 and a white. That lets us get angel tokens for 2 mana. That's a card I'm really interested in. And then, sorry, that was the enchantment I was interested in here that we didn't see. I like the idea of Grave Pact. I wouldn't even mind something like Reconnaissance to give all of our creatures vigilance. That way we can attack with them and still be able to leave them back. And of course all of those things would be searchable with the the Enlightened Tutors and things like that. Let's go ahead and add these. Let's go ahead and add these other enchantments in. Etchings I just really like because it buffs our board. Black Market Connections is very quickly becoming a black staple, which I think is kind of interesting. It's a very good card for 1 life every turn. You're getting a treasure, which can be put to such good use. Griffin Airy is going to be of good use for us for, like I said, getting those tokens to use for our benefit. All right, coming down into our utility lands. Starlight Sanctum seems interesting. Pay a white, sack a Cleric to gain life equal to its toughness. Pay a black, sack a Cleric. People lose life equal to its power. That seems really good. Vault to the Archangel, giving all our creatures lifelink and death up seems interesting. I'd like to try to play the Urborg Cabal Coffers if I can. If I can't, then that's completely fine. Castle Lochthwain can draw us some cards. Urborg might just come in handy because if most of our creatures are black anyway, it's just going to allow us to tap everything for black. The other thing I like about Urborg is if we're going to play some of these utility lands that don't tap for colored mana, Urborg can help them tap for colored mana. Nykthos is perfect. I'd like to try to play Cabal Coffers, but I don't end up thinking like we're going to end up getting trapped playing it. But I like it. I also like Hall of Heliod's Generosity. It allows us to get an enchantment card back on top. If we play Urza Saga before this, we can actually get Urza Saga back, which is kind of cool, or any of our other enchantments. Okay, let's rock into artifacts. Relica Legends seems interesting. The question is, are we playing enough? Are we playing enough? Are we going to be playing enough legendaries to make the tap a legendary creature you control for a mana worth it? So that's something we're going to have to take a look at. And if we are, then I'm definitely not opposed to playing it. It's just, are we actually going to hit enough of a benefit, from the legendaries? And like I said, if we can, I'm 100% down. I just gotta, what I'll have to do there is I'm just gonna take a look once we cut our creatures down, how many legendaries we have and what we have there. All right, and then as far as regular lands, Tainted Field seems like it's going to be usable. Path of Ancestry is either, especially, and then we get the Scry 1 on the Clerics. Forgot about Vault of Champions. Forgot about Temple of Sounds. Both really good cards. We got our Pathway. I had Marsh Flats. I like the idea of the Snarl. We can think about that. Cavern of Souls, since we're going to be playing a lot of Clerics. Silent Clearing can get us that drawn card. Concealed Courtyard seems, pardon me, really good for that same reason. I like the sealed, the secluded courtyard. Again, tapping for any color for a Cleric. Those are the kind of cards that we're really going to take good advantage of. And then as long as we have enough basics, we'll play this Fabled Passage. All right, Tainted Field, I feel like more often than not is going to be able to tap for either. Path of Ancestry is great because it taps for any color, and then if we cast a Cleric with it, it scries us 1, which is never a bad thing, especially when you're trying to work your way through your deck. Temple of Sounds. I really like the pathways in 2-color decks. I feel like they end up giving good payment. I'm going to cut the Snarl for now. I think we have plenty of other dual lands that are going to be just fine. Silent Clearing, Concealed Courtyard. The Secluded Courtyards will end up just coming down on basic lands. And then I think we can end up playing the Fabled Passage. All right, so let's try coming down to 4 here. 4 here. Brings them to 35 lands. That seems perfect. We're in a non-green colors. We're going to need all the lands we can get. Well, friends, we're down to 125. I like the look of it so far. So let's get into everyone's favorite time of deck building, and that's cutting cards. I'm joking when I say it's everybody's favorite. This is both the best and worst part of deck building is when you have to cut down on cards. All right. Well, like every other time in Millzy Brews, if this is your first time watching Millzy Brews, then I'll explain to you how I do this. I'm going to cut this deck down to 100. The link's going to be on the description. Every card that I cut from this point is going to go in the maybe board so that you can see it and you can test this deck or do whatever you'd like to do to this deck. It is yours to copy and use however you'd like. I, most of the time, will do the same thing. But I want to preserve the deck as it was when I built it. And so for that reason, I want you to see all of the ideas I had in the sideboard. So looking at the board wipes, pardon me, I think we're going to cut Winds of Abandon. Vanquish the Horde more often than not is going to come down to some pretty cheap mana. Pardon me. And then Farewell and Damp are just two really good board wipes. And they're going to kind of help us cover what we want to do. I like Winds of Abandon because it exiles. But more often than not, we're going to want one of those really cheap board wipes. Going over to our instance, I feel like we have too much removal. I think that's a scary sentence to say out loud, but I think we have plenty. I'm going to try the D-Spark. I think more often than not, Fateful, Dire Tactics and Swords and Path are going to come into more help than D-Spark will. It does say non-land, does say target permanent, but we have other things that can remove permanents, so I think I'm good with that. I think I'm good with that cut. We also have plenty of tutors, so if there's a problem thing, we can also go get the Anguish Unmaking or anything like that. Village Rites and Deadly Dispute seem like maybe one draw spell too many. Victimize is only half the mana, but Deadly Dispute gives us a treasure back. So I think I like Deadly Dispute just that little bit more. Let's go through the enchantments. I'm going to cut Path of Bravery. As much as I like the idea of it, I just don't see it doing as much good. And then I know that we talked so highly about the tokens plan, but I think Griffin Airy just does a little bit less than the other ones that we have that do it. So I am going to do that. Oh, I think I remembered the card I was thinking of. It's Angelic Cores. No, it's like at the Angelic Accord. Here it is. Being of end step. If each end step you gain 4 more life, make an angel. That's what I was thinking of. And I know that there's more of a cost gap than there's more. It costs more and it requires more life. But this is at the end of every end step, whereas Griffin Airy is only at the end of our end step. So I feel like more often than not, Angelic Accord will end up getting us more out of it. And then if we have to cut another enchantment, it actually might, from what I can tell, be Black Market Connections. But we'll come back to that. Let's go over to the artifacts. I really like all of our artifacts. It might be Bantu's Monument for now. We really need to make sure that our mana's there. I kind of also want to try cutting Relic Vow for now. As much as I really like both of those cards, we need those mana producers, and we have so many other generally good cards. Like I'm half even considered to cut a Idyllic Tutor because we're going to end up needing to cut a bunch of creatures, and we can only cut so many. I mean, we can cut 14 or 15, but we're still going to have to cut other cards. So we'll move the Idyllic Tutor for now. Like I said, we have plenty of other tutors, so we're not limited to not being able to get these when we need them. All right, so let's go through the creatures, and what I'm going to try to do is try to prioritize what I think is the most important, and then we can always come back later and kind of swap one for one creatures back in. Destiny, I love. The Peacekeeper, I am so on the fence about. I think I'm going to cut it for now, but I can see so many reasons why it would come back in. Ogma, yes, it's going to end up drawing us cards and gaining life. Auroch Champion, yes. Ailey, yes. Cleric's Life Bond, I'm going to cut because we have so many of those Soul Sister effects already, and I think so many of them are better. Necromancer is one of our reanimation targets, but I think is still pretty good. Drana. Interworker is good. I still like the Evolved Sleeper, although I think the argument can be made for cutting it. Give Runes is great. Heliod's great. I'm going to cut the Penance for now. I'm going to cut Liliana for now. I want to like this card in this deck, but the more that I look at it, the more I just feel like other cards deserve its slot. Mother of Runes. So much of me says I should play both, but my gut tells me that I should cut one of them, so we'll come back to that. Nils. As much as I like that kind of stopping your opponents in their tracks thing, maybe it doesn't do as much as we want it to do. Aura is going to help us reanimate Clerics, which is a great. Priest of the Forgotten Realms. I still really, I get the eye test of why it's good, but maybe I need to just play with it to find out why it's good. Ravos brings stuff back to our hand. Just feels like it's going to be too expensive. Maybe it's one of those creatures that comes back in once we take a look at the rest of it. Righteous Valkyrie is a slam dunk. Glyph Weaver is going to give all our creatures indestructible. On the backside, it is also a board wipe, so that's something to consider. Same thing with Selfless Spirit. This is going to be kind of another tutor, but it also pumps all of our creatures. I think I might cut Shadowheart as much as I like it. Might not do as much as I want it to do. Shale's really interesting, and on the backside, maybe this gets cut too. Maybe the +1/+1 counters aren't going to be enough. I like Shieldred. I really want to keep Shieldred, so we'll keep it in the list for now. Sister Hospitaller seems really good. Soul Warden, Soul's Attendant Speaker, Suture, Felice. Might end up getting cut for now, unless we can really prove that we're making all those tokens. Love Twilight Prophet. Timna's really good. Same there. Walking Ballista, Weather Wayfinder, Yawgmoth. Now we're down to 109. This is kind of what I was worried about. I was worried that we were going to end up needing to cut probably 2 or 3 or 4 more creatures, and then we're going to have to figure out what the heck else we're going to cut, but that's okay. I love the idea of Edgewalker. There's so many ways that I feel like it doesn't do what I want it to do. I feel like I want to keep my curve where it needs to be. I'm going to cut Mother Runes for Giver Runes just because Giver Runes gives Carlos protection as well, which I don't expect to be as beneficial, but I still feel like it could be beneficial. Is it Sister Hospital tier just because it's so expensive? Maybe it's just because it's 6 that it gets cut. I'm going to cut the Priest. Again, I see the benefit, but I don't know. I think more often than not, it just ends up not being good. I'm going to cut the Evolved Sleeper. Although the 3-mana draw could be really good. So this is the problem now, is I end up just second guessing myself, and then I get stuck at 102 or 101. But I think the best advice I can give you when it comes to cutting cards is if you're ever not sure, this is why I really recommend you test your decks. Make the cuts, try the decks without the cut, and see what you think of it, and play around with those numbers to find the area that you really like for the numbers. Don't be afraid to try a deck, even if you don't think it's perfect, because I promise you, no deck will ever be perfect. It's just impossible to make a perfect deck the first time around, and that's okay. That's completely okay. I really like Shieldred, but maybe Shieldred is the thing to go. Weathered Wayfinder could be a way to go, but Weathered Wayfinder just seems like one of those cards that if we have it really early in the game, it completely catches us up. But if we see it late in the game, it seems really bad. So maybe it's the card that needs to kind of be cut there. I like the book because same thing, it gives us those tokens. Angelic Accord gives us those tokens. And now I'm just going to try to cut 4 more cards. I like Victimize because Victimize is kind of that reanimate, but a little bit better. And if we get hit with a board wipe and get a creature back out, Victimize can help us rebuild. Farewell and Damn don't seem like enough removal. I'm going to cut Vanquish the Horde. I think 2 board wipes is probably good enough. 103. If we cut the Fateful Absence, we still have Swords and Path, which are still creature removal spells. 102. Cleric Class is just good because it's going to benefit us gaining life. Yeah, I'm pretty stuck. I think I'm stuck at 102, guys. This is the hard part. It's cutting things and feeling confident. 34 lands seems doable, but we're in black-white. We don't have a ton of card draw and ramp, so we really want the extra lands, especially because when we draw them, we want to be able to play them. All right, maybe we cut another creature. I'm just in my head, I'm trying to think, win con, payoff, pays off a strategy. Maybe Doom Necromancer. So we have so many other reanimation effects. Gets us down to 101. Don't want to cut Moonblessed Cleric because that's can go get us the different things. I really don't want to cut Shieldred because I feel like this is a great list for it. This is a great list for all that life gain. But maybe, just maybe, the life gain is there without it. I don't know. But I think that's where I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it at 100 there. Black-white life gain, Cleric Tribal, a little bit of Aristocrats, a little bit of life gain, and a lot of Cleric Tribal. I think the deck looks interesting. This is a deck that requires a lot of testing because we need to make sure that all of our ratios are correct. And if any of these cards would be sorely missed, but I think that's the fun of deck building, is that now we get to go test our deck out and see if we have any merit or if we just put together a pile that we like the look of. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think I shouldn't have cut. Let me know what you think I should have cut. Let me know what obscure card I didn't know about, or what card you've tried in your Cleric lists or your black-white life gain list that you've liked better. I would love to hear your guys' opinions down in the comment, and I'll make sure I respond to all of them. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you next time.